Good morning, Student Affairs. Who's ready for another exciting State of the Division? I can't hear y'all. Who's ready for another exciting State of the Division? That's right. Okay, now before we begin, I want the energy. I want y'all pumping. So, where are my friends from the admissions and enrollment team? A&E, where y'all at? Let's do that again. Where are my friends from A&E at? Much better. What about my friends from the Residential Student Service Programs, RSSP? That's right, RSSP. What about my friends in the Dean of Students area? University Health Services. Okay, UHS, we see you. And the immediate offices. Where are the immediate offices at? We'll do that last one more time. And where are the immediate offices at? That's right. We're so excited to have you here today. And now it gives me my pleasure to welcome on the stage our fearless leader, our Vice Chancellor for the Division of Student Affairs, Steve Sutton. Give him a round of applause. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. All right, how about another applause for Harris Mojadidi, our staffer on the streets. He does such a great job. Again, I'm Steve Sutton. My pronouns are he, him, his. I have the pleasure to serve as your Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs. I've been very much looking forward to today. It's going to be a lot of exciting information we're going to share with you. I do want to start by just acknowledging and paying respect to the traditional inhabitants of this land, the Ohlone people. They have a unique, yes, thank you, a unique and enduring relationship with this land. I ask that we be respectful and mindful of that. Did it move behind me? All right. So today we're going to talk a lot about the power of storytelling. We have a very large and diverse division of student affairs. We have a large collection of stories. You had the opportunity as you were coming in to see many of those stories and the types of things that people value, that they find important for themselves, the things that they have captured in pictures and in words and put before us. And we also, each year, we publish our impact report. That tells the story of the division from a numbers perspective, but we're much more than that. There's so much that we have to tell as a division. This really is going to be a theme for us this year, the story of the power of storytelling. We'll talk more about that throughout the day. A big part of our story this year begins with our campus strategic plan. I'm sure you've seen this statement before, but the connect, discover, engage, reflect words that jump out, those four magical words, very much, I think, capture what our undergraduate experience is about here at Berkeley. And I think Student Affairs has a definitive role in helping bring those words to life. So today we're going to talk about not only the stories that we have as a division, but also how we are furthering the goals of our institution. And Student Affairs has a very significant role, and you'll hear that a number of times today. I just have to try and look. So these four pillars were introduced at this event last year. These are what we've been using to guide our vision for the past year. We're going to talk about each one of these today, and some of the things that we'll do today will be grounded in these pillars. Also, I've spent a lot of time talking with the leadership team within Student Affairs, the Student Affairs Cabinet. These are folks that are direct reports to me, and then their direct reports about these four pillars. And we've surmised that we need to do a better job of actually defining these pillars and making these pillars more actionable, bringing them more to life for each of you in the work that you do. So that'll be one of the things that we'll also talk about today. Here is our agenda for the day. We are going to start with a great keynote address from a colleague of ours from the Office of the President, Dr. Yvette Guillotte. We're going to have some staff presentations, 3 different staff presentations, and this came directly out of feedback that you gave us last year in terms of wanting to integrate more of folks across the division into this large event. So that's going to happen today. Again, they will talk about their stories and how they impact the lives of our students. We'll have a student performance, which is traditional for us, a way for us to actually celebrate what our students do. Then I'll have a chance at the end to have give a closing keynote. And then we'll wrap up the day with lunch. Hope you'll stick around for lunch. We'll give you instructions later on how to get your lunch. And I should also mention that at the tables, there are note cards. So if you'd like to raise up some questions for either Yvette or myself, please fill those out. And Ellen and Adam, I think, will be moving around to get those cards. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Yvette Guillotte, who has more than 20 years of experience in diversity and institutional equity leadership. She currently serves as Vice Provost for Diversity and Engagement and the Interim Vice President for Student Affairs for the University of California System. In these roles, she provides strategic leadership and advice for translating UC's vision of inclusive excellence into sustainable policies, practices, and programs. Yvette leads UC-wide efforts to foster equitable campus climate for the faculty, students, and staff. She oversees programs and services that enhance the accessibility of college degrees, including pre-college academic preparation and teacher professional development programs, and is responsible for system-wide policies and practice related to freshman and transfer admissions, undergraduate and graduate campus life, and student financial support. Yvette has her doctorate, MA, and bachelor degrees from, guess where? UC Berkeley. Her research includes early African-American life writing and Afro-Christian discourses of community development and nationalism. Let me just say on a personal level, I've always really valued the leadership that Yvette brings to her role. She's been a great thought partner for me as I've been in this role. I know she cares deeply for students and cares deeply about the mission of the UC system. So please welcome Dr. Yvette Guillotte.
Bears. All right, well, good morning, everyone. Why are these seats empty? I'm going to make you come to the front when you ask questions. Just kidding. I just want to thank Steve and Ann for the invitation to come and speak with you today. I'm really, really grateful to have the opportunity. I always think, why would anyone want me to talk? So I'm deeply humbled by that experience. And it's always a pleasure to visit the Berkeley campus and to visit student affairs in particular. Lots of my friends are in this room. So it's wonderful to see all of you. I spent a lot of years here on the Berkeley campus as an administrative assistant 2, blank assistant 3, student affairs officer 1, 2, 3, 4, academic coordinator. I had a lot of roles here. And so before anything else, I want to share my deep appreciation to you for everything you do to ensure an exemplary academic experience for our students. So give yourselves a round of applause for that. So Steve and Ann said, talk about stories. And I said, I work at the president's office. We don't have stories. We just have data and policy. But I started to think about my first experience, my first encounter with student affairs when I was an undergraduate here. And I came to UC Berkeley as a transfer student from a private college in Colorado. And I was an EOP student. And my EOP advisor at the time, she asked me about research, which was something I really never thought about. I never thought about research. I didn't understand what research was. I certainly didn't see myself as a researcher. And she connected me to a faculty member in the AfricanAmerican Studies department who was working on a project on the Harlem Renaissance with a woman who resided in Oakland, whose name is Louise Thompson Patterson, and you may have heard of Mrs. Patterson. So Louise and her husband had been publishers and supporters of many of the artists who comprise the Harlem Renaissance Writers Guilds and Actors Guilds and things like that. And Professor Wilkerson had access to her papers, which included papers by letters written by Langston Hughes. And so it was my job, those early research days, to read those letters and catalog those letters in preparation for a study that Professor Wilkerson was doing. And in that process, it really opened up a new world for me. And it was pivotal, I think, in my later decisions to pursue graduate work in literature and particularly African-American literature. And I often think that had it not been for that advisor, whose name was Ida, who went beyond what we think of the transactions in student affairs, right? Telebears, transcripts. I may not have had the opportunity or thought about pursuing research. And that eventual research experience, that eventual analytical work, I think has been really pivotal to just not only my intellectual pursuits, but my professional pursuits. So in hearkening back to the slide that Steve had up earlier, that ability to connect, right, to engage, to foster, to develop is so critical to student affairs. And I think it's what makes student affairs professionals unique. And so while I was in graduate school, I was a student affairs professional too, because I wanted to be like Ida for other students, right? I wanted to connect other students to that experience. So whether that kind of engagement is taking place in an advisor's office, whether it's taking place through our pre-admissions recruitment, in financial aid, in the residence halls, through student leadership development, through student life, health services, prevention, intervention, wherever it's taking place, the opportunity we have to go beyond the transactional is what opens doors and changes lives for students, and that is unique to student affairs as a profession. And the last 9 months, so as Steve said, I'm the Vice Provost for Diversity and Engagement for the system. And for the last 9 months, I've been the interim Vice President for Student Affairs. And I'm the Chief Outreach Officer for the university. I am not the Chief Diversity Officer, because that's all your all's job. That's not my job. So I just want to remind you, we are all Chief Diversity Officers, right? But it's also really clarified for me, just having all of these different roles, what it means to have a student success framework in place for a university. And all of these roles have afforded me a bird's eye view at the system level of what exemplary student experience looks like from preschool through the professoriate. That's how large our impact is. One of our colleagues at Irvine talks about the 60-year curriculum, right? That the engagement of students with the university is a lifelong engagement that begins very early, even before they become students on our campuses. So for me, this is what student affairs is at its core, right? And what it can do best. It promotes inclusivity and engagement. It facilitates and ensures that all of the student domains, right? Academic, co-curricular, extracurricular, transactional, place students and their success first, so that they graduate on time and they move on to meaningful careers. So I thought I'd talk to you today about student affairs and the roles that it plays in fostering that kind of exemplary student experience, and particularly in the context of the new generation of students. And I'm borrowing that term from a professor here, David Kerp, in public policy, who defines this new generation as students who are increasingly the first in their family to attend college, who are older, who are parents, who are from underrepresented groups, or they come from low-income backgrounds. And the student experience in the future will, by and large, need to be one that has these needs for these students at its core. So I want to focus today on some hot issues that exemplify the current environment for student affairs professionals. They impact all areas of student affairs, arguably, and I think speak to where we need to focus if we're going to best meet the needs of our students where they are now and into the future. And these are two things: affordability and the student experience. And the student experience particularly with student mental health, basic needs, and campus climate. So getting those students here, keeping them here, fostering their sense of belonging, inclusion, their sense of individuality. They want to feel like individuals when they're on our campuses. And closing graduation gaps through our efforts are all critical and vital ways that we ensure that our students are successful and that they engage with this university across their lives in this life cycle that Gary Matkin says is at least 60 years. So I want you to consider a couple of things in this. Consider the higher likelihood of these new generation students undermatching for their first jobs, not pursuing graduate education, or foregoing university engagement as an alumni because their undergraduate experience didn't overtly prepare them for these transitions. Consider how much the fear of debt is at the root of many of their decisions, whether that means to work multiple jobs, lacking stable or secure housing, or passing on study abroad or research opportunities, or not participating in study groups or other activities that enhance their achievement and expand their networks. Perhaps multiple jobs or a hostile campus climate is resulting in longer time to degree, and therefore a decrease in their earnings over the first decade of their careers. So student success demands data, so do you mind if we look at some? Am I up or down? Which way? I never know. Right. Okay. All right, good. Okay. So I want to start with the end. What happens to our current alumni in terms of their graduate degree attainment after graduation and in terms of their earnings with graduate degrees or if they have only an undergraduate degree? So let's take a look at the system and at Berkeley. So by and large, we do a pretty good job when it comes to graduate school, and this campus, the Berkeley campus, really does meet or exceed the system when it comes to graduate school enrollment. We do a pretty good job at Berkeley to ensure that our students move on to graduate school. But we can do more to encourage our Latinx students, our first-generation students, our African-American students, our low-income and our transfer students to pursue graduate education. We need more engagement with those students on what that looks like, right? It's part of your pillar. It's part of your campus strategic plan. Berkeley students are also doing a pretty good job in terms of earnings. They outpace almost all areas of the UC system in terms of median earnings. And UC students also, overall, exemplify social mobility. Students from the lowest family earning quartiles throughout the system, and particularly here at this campus, they're going to earn more on average than their parents' combined income within 5 years of graduation. We are an engine of social mobility at the University of California, and we need to be that engine of social mobility more for the students who are most underrepresented on our campuses and in our system. So there are a lot of good things going on. Cruz is going to hate this next slide, so no questions from you. All right. All right, let's talk debt. Let's talk debt. But if we're going to maintain or improve on those graduation outcomes, those graduate degree attainment, those median income earnings data, we need to address affordability for our current and future students. UC expects that all students are going to take out student loans as part of our overall financial aid strategy, which is called the education financing model. So it's not surprising that UC's low-income students are more likely to borrow. There are differences, however, in the borrowing rates and the cumulative debt of underrepresented students from underrepresented groups, and in particular, our African-American students. And this is another place where the student experience comes into play. And it's important to look at where we may be able to impact debt burdens beyond policy changes and scholarships. So in 2017-18, 55% of UC's California residents graduated with a student loan debt with an average loan per borrower of about $18,400. For students who entered as first-time freshmen, so not transfer students, that figure is slightly higher at about $21,000. And UC student debt upon graduation compares well to national averages, right? So we're right in the sweet spot when it comes to the amount of debt that our students leave with. So nationally, about 65% of the graduating class, and the most recent data we have is 2017, they had student loan debt on average about $28,650 per borrower. 81% of the lowest income African Americans and 72% of our lowest income Chicanx Latinx students graduate with some debt, compared to 63% of students who don't come from underrepresented groups. African American students graduated with about $4,000 more in debt on average than students who are not from underrepresented groups. That is close to a year's worth of the federal subsidized loan maximum, which is about $5,500. Why do you think that is? We don't have all the answers, but one of the things we think is that when we isolate borrowing outcomes by the number of years it takes to graduate, it's clear that the 5th year makes a big difference in borrowing for African American and Chicano Latino students. So when students graduate in 6 years, I think I have a slide on this, do I? Instead of 4, they're leaving with more debt, and they're decreasing their earnings potential over their first decade. So our collective work, the challenge I have to you all in your roles in student affairs, is to help us work on timely graduation. Help ensure that our students get the maximum return on investment of a UC Berkeley education. Fair enough? Cool. So timely graduation really goes to the heart of the student experience. It's one of our major goals is to close graduation gaps across the system. And that means student success has to be everyone's job, not just student affairs, not just diversity and equity and inclusion, not just undergraduate education, not just the graduate division, not just facilities. It's got to be everyone's job. There are a lot of things that play a part, of course, in an exemplary student experience, but key to that is access to resources and supports, and in particular, the climate experience that students want for us. Strong student mental health support, basic needs, and an inclusive learning and social environment. So let's talk a little bit about mental health. As our students' needs are evolving, and as enrollment growth, I'm sure you've talked about the growth in enrollment here on the campus, and as we face challenges to recruiting staff, we're continuing to see demand across the system for mental health resources that continues to grow. Access to appointments is still good. We've seen a 3.5% increase in the number of requests for individual counseling visits, and we've seen a 1-day increase in the average wait time to initial intake for a routine visit. So we've gone from 9 days for a routine visit to 10 days. We're also seeing that the percentage of students that are seen within 2 weeks is gradually declining. And for psychiatry system-wide, we've seen an 8% increase in individual psychiatry visits and a 4-day increase in average wait time. So we have to work as a system and across all of the campuses to address these gaps. We need more resources for student financial support, and we have to pay really close attention to our student mental health needs. And that includes culturally competent counselors and psychiatrists as part of that. So we're working with the state and others to bring the necessary additional resources. We're calculating that across the system, about $180 million extra dollars. Wish me luck. Let's next talk about student basic needs. And I know you'll hear a lot about this today as part of your State of the Division. I think this is the next hot issue for student affairs and for campuses generally. It's to address student basic needs in terms of housing and food. We see significant disparities with underrepresented students, first generation and Pell students who are more likely to experience homelessness and are significantly more likely to experience food insecurity than their peers. The good news is that the state recently awarded the University of California, and Berkeley gets its fair share, with $15 million to address ongoing, and that's ongoing money, right? They don't always give us ongoing money, but they've given us some money that we get year over year to address food insecurity. Each campus has submitted a plan. I think we have some questions for the Berkeley plan, but we have the plan in place. And as a system, we've committed to a protocol of CalFresh first, food pantry second, and education in general, starting with pre-college students. So again, those of you who work in pre-admissions recruiting know about student basic needs and what we do in that space, because students need to know that as part of their consideration for where they're going to go to school. The state has also given us an additional $3.5 million to address what we call rapid rehousing, which is a holistic intervention methodology that includes case management, transitional housing, financial assistance, and move-in packages to cover individuals' basic housing needs. We need to pay close attention as a university community to these issues, and we need to address them through holistic and intentional approaches with a focus on our most marginalized student groups who are African American and Chicanx, Latinx students. And then finally, I want to talk about climate as a key driver of student engagement and student completion. Berkeley just completed, through your Equity and Inclusion Department, you did a campus-wide climate survey. Did you all participate in that? Very, very good. These data are not from that survey, because they haven't given that to me yet. These are actually UQ's data, right? The Undergraduate Experience Survey data from 2018. This first slide that I'm going to show you is the level of disagreement that students had with this statement: this campus values diversity. So while campus-wide, the percentage of students who disagreed was about 16%, that yellow bar, for students from underrepresented groups, first-generation transfer students and low-income students, those percentages are significantly higher. And again, African Americans are significant outliers here. Their student experience and sense of belonging is very different on this campus than it is for other students, full stop. The challenges they face on this campus impact their rates and the likelihood that they will complete, and they are a population that student affairs must pay close attention to. This next slide asks students about whether they feel comfortable with the climate on this campus. And again, notice the significant drops going toward the bottom for students from the most underrepresented groups. We must pay attention to our most marginalized student groups and find solutions for those students, because in doing so, we find solutions for all of our students. So I want to close by sharing an observation that came to me from a UCLA graduate student, and I'm sorry, but I thought it was really profound. I wanted to share it with you because it sticks with me, and it reminds me of why we need deliberate, focused, holistic, evidence, and data-based student-focused solutions for addressing these big issues in the student experience, so that we can make better progress on closing graduation gaps, and we can ensure timely completion for all of our students, and particularly our most marginalized students. And this student was describing his experience with how the status quo of how we do our work gets in the way of big and bold solutions to our thorniest problems, right? So he said, imagine that someone dumped a huge pile of bricks in front of the Jan steps. So the Jan steps is this like long, anyone know UCLA? Penman does, right? Yeah, so it's that long set of that corridor steps leading up to the library. Replace it in your mind with Sproul Plaza. That'll work. So he said, imagine someone dropped a huge pile of bricks in front of Sproul Plaza, and everyone who just happened to be around the steps at that time was instructed to start constructing a building. Right? Just go build a building. That observation makes the point that we value student success as everyone's job, and that's good, right? It's a sense of shared responsibility. That's exactly what we want. But he also observes that we expect or we assume that everyone can contribute to the student experience just because they happen to be here. And that's not a good thing, right? When we're simply reacting to the environment, we lose the opportunity to work intentionally and to change the systems for the benefit of all. So I want to leave you with intentionality. Intentionality is the key to our profession. And to those of us in student affairs, we have to lead and work with others, our faculty, our neighboring departments, our communities, and the communities from which our students come, to create the kind of tools that will ensure that all of our students, and particularly the ones from the most marginalized groups, can afford the university, they are engaged, they feel included, they have services that meet their needs, and they graduate on time and they're prepared for meaningful careers. So I want to thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to take your questions. You do. Great. Do I have the right of refusal? No? I just okay. No. Go ahead. I can pass it to Steve. Very good.
All right. So what do you believe are the factors behind the increased need for mental health services, and how can we support students?
So I think the increased need is in some part driven by the kind of students we have. I was talking to our faculty rep yesterday, who's a professor of a cognitive development psychologist from Riverside, and she talked about how when you have such high-performing students, that and a faculty and classroom culture that really demands the best of everyone, that our students don't know how to actually, when they've encountered a problem, they don't know how to address it. And the culture in the classroom isn't one that makes that very possible. So when we think about student mental health, we have a three-tiered model, right? So, and the third tier has to do with mentally healthy campuses. And that means we have to do a lot of work with our faculty and our graduate students to destigmatize mental health. We have to work with our populations who may not be accustomed or think of mental health as something that they should be mentally healthy and that they can go and get help. We have to destigmatize it. We have to educate our faculty, and we have to help build campus classroom culture that allows for experimentation, allows for mistakes, and directs people to help when they're struggling. Years ago, I used to work in the Athletic Study Center. I was an academic advisor. And I would never hire tutors who had all A's. Why was that? Because I wanted people who could understand what it meant to struggle. And if you had only all A's, you were not going to be the best tutor for me. So we need a culture of experimentation where failure is okay. When you're struggling, these are the resources, and that you're going to be all right. And I think we haven't quite gotten to that vision of a mentally healthy campus community yet. And that's what's going to take the time and going to take the money.
Great. Have basic needs issues gotten worse recently, or is there just more awareness?
Oh, that's a good question. Have basic needs issues gotten worse lately, or is there just more awareness? So I think it's both. I think it's awareness, but I think in the last 5 years, we've seen an explosion of housing and food insecurity. And in large part, it's because many communities haven't recovered from that 2008 recession. We think there's a recovery in place, but it's very, very uneven. So we've seen an explosion in the state, I'm sure many of you have experienced it, of the cost of housing. So the issues of housing insecurity don't just affect UC students, they affect CSU students, private university students, community college students. So we need to address this at a policy level, and addressing the housing crisis is, I think, a key part of that. So while we're happy to have the 15 million, we need better policy infrastructure, which has to do with financial aid reform, right? It has to do with housing and policy. We're building across the system just a ton of new beds, right, for students to address this. But it is, I think, built into the infrastructure of California, its economy, and its policy drivers.
So what factors impact time to graduation? For example, do triple and double degrees have an impact?
Well, that's a good question. They possibly could, but it's probably not those students. I think what has more impact is preparation, right? Academic advising, engagement, and the needs of students beyond this institution. So, they exist here, but they exist in communities and they exist in families. I think hostile campus and classroom climate has a lot to do with it. I see, even though I'm at the president's office, I see students all the time, because otherwise I would die. And they will tell me about things that faculty say to them. Well, you shouldn't be here. You're not good enough for this. And when you talk to faculty, they say, well, I'm trying to motivate them the way I was motivated. I'm like, yeah, this is not gonna work. So we really have to work with our graduate students who are GSIs, who have the most contact with students, our faculty, about classroom environment. Because I think it's a big driver of why students are stopping out, pausing, and then eventually not completing. There is a study by the Campaign for College Opportunity on the state of African Americans in California. And the largest group of Californians who have not finished their degrees are African American. So I think the university has a big opportunity in degree completion for adults who have stepped out, and the state has given us some money to pilot that, and I think extension is a good route for that. But the ability to understand, using our data, who didn't finish, and create the kind of incentives and ways for those people to come back and finish is something we need to pursue.
So of the African American students who do not feel a sense of belonging, what were some of the factors noted in that, and what kind of strategies and initiatives might we be able to undertake to address those?
Sure. So I think on this campus, you've done some good preliminary work. One of the issues has been about money. And so through your Equity and Inclusion Office and with your development offices, creating the African American Achievement Scholarship, right, which allows students to, provides funding for those students has been a good effort. Acknowledging the pain is another good effort, right? And so Chancellor Chris' project about acknowledging the contributions that African Americans have made to this institution has been a good effort. Without critical mass, it's really, really hard. And students tend to feel very, very isolated in their majors and in their classrooms. They're excluded from study groups and things of that sort. So I think that the campus has a lot more to do. I know that many of you are working on those efforts. But those two things, making sure there's money and trying to address the climate, and part of that is an acknowledgement. Louise Thompson Patterson was one of the first graduates of this institution. 1908, I think she graduated from UC. Critical mass, right? So looking at how we can foster, recruit and retain more of our students from the front end. I think the other thing that we have to do just institution-wide is help students understand the value of a research university, because a lot of students in high school don't know the difference between CSU or UC other than the price point. They just think, oh, it just costs more. So we have to do a better job of explaining to them the value. I mean, we're an institution, and this campus in particular, that's been drivers of so many movements around social justice. That should appeal to our students, but they don't know enough about that. So we need to do a better job pre-college to make sure they understand the research university and its role in their education and their careers.
All right, and I think this will be our last one. So from a system-wide level, how do you assess how different universities, such as Berkeley, are doing to address some of the needs that you outlined?
Yeah, so if you work with the Office of the President, we love data. So we are always benchmarking. First, we benchmark against ourselves, right? We are different kinds of campuses in different places, but we also benchmark against national universities. And for the most part, we show up pretty well. But that's not good enough, because we are the University of California. We ought to be better than CUNY and SUNY. We have this institution because we agreed to educate the people of California. That's why we have the land that we built the buildings on that is now the University of California. We agreed to educate the people of California. In the 19th century, those were poor, working class white people. Increasingly, they are black and brown. So we need to be better than our benchmark institutions, the Select 8. We need to be better than anyone in this work because of who we are and what we represent. Well, thank you so much. Enjoy your day.